Okay, we're back talking about reproduction and development, and still focusing on reproduction. In our last video, we looked at the difference between asexual and sexual reproduction. So for this video, we're going to focus on cell division, but we'll be really looking at mitosis. And later on, we'll come back to meiosis in another video and compare the two. So when we're looking at mitosis, this is a form of asexual reproduction. They're pretty much the same thing because the result is cells with identical genes and chromosomes. So once again, looking at the connection here, we have genes that make up our DNA. Our DNA is what makes up chromosomes. Since we'll be talking about chromosomes for the next couple of videos, let's really look at them. They do look like X's at certain points in the process, and chromosomes are made up of DNA. DNA wound very tightly into a structure that can be moved. When you actually look at a cell and you look in the nucleus, when the cell isn't in the process of dividing, DNA is not kept in that chromosomal form. DNA is actually uncoiled in this mess of strands called chromatin. No, that's not a picture of noodles in a bowl. That's actually the inside of a nucleus and all of the unwound DNA. That's because DNA is constantly being read and transcribed and turned into proteins. So that unzipping has evolved to just always be uncoiled. But when cell division happens, the DNA condenses, it shrinks into chromosomes. And that's what you see pictured on the right. Just a little bit more about that process. One of the steps in cell division and mitosis is replicating DNA. The replication of DNA takes a chromosome and makes an exact copy. So the result is two pieces, after replication, two pieces that are joined together at the center. This is really important to understand because the purpose of mitosis is to make a new cell exactly like the original. So to do that, you have to copy the DNA. So in the end of replication, you wind up with copied chromosomes that are attached in the center. This is one chromosome, and this is its sister chromatid. They're attached at the center. So this side is a copy of this side. And the same thing with this chromosome. This side of the chromosome is copied here as well. This is a microscope, a microscopic view of some cells undergoing the process of mitosis. Notice that they're not all doing it at the same time. And it's an important thing to stress is that this is a individual cell-by-cell pattern. All right, so you can see that they're all in different stages. And try to keep in mind that each cell has its own instructions on when to divide and when to go through this process. So by the end of the video, my hope is you'll get to see each stage. Now, it's a very, very intricate process. There are a lot of small details. And to be honest with you, it's not necessary that you need to know every single detail at this point. What the most important thing to remember about mitosis is at the end, you're winding up with two cells, and those two cells are genetically identical. They are exactly the same. There's no difference. If you can lock that in now, that at the end of mitosis, I wind up with two cells that are exactly the same, you're in good shape. Just continuing to talk about what cells go through. Every cell goes through something called a cell cycle. This picture is showing you the cell cycle for a typical cell. One way to think about it is it's almost like a clock. All right, you have different times on the clock, right? And time goes around the clock, like the hands on a clock go around. It's really the same concept. The cell starts in a G1 phase, which is a growth phase. And basically, the cell grows to its mature size, and at the end of that growth phase, the DNA starts to replicate itself. So this word synthesis can be replaced with the word replication. They're really the same thing, and more on that in a moment. But the process from G1 to the S phase takes a set amount of time. So again, thinking of this as a clock, every cell has an internal mechanism that keeps track of these events, and they follow in this path. So the process of DNA synthesis or DNA replication is involved. You have two sides of the original DNA strand. So this says original DNA here, and this is original DNA here. And what's being filled in on the inside is new DNA. So to make a new copy of DNA, the DNA unzips and new pieces are added according to the sequence on either side. And in the end, you wind up with two strands that are identical. So this is the process of DNA synthesis. Now, after that synthesis is over, the cell enters what's called the G2 phase. It's another growth phase. Again, there are organelles, there are parts of the cell that have to be ready for the division. And that G2 phase is shorter than the other phases. And when that phase is over, it enters mitosis. Mitosis being the division of the cell. And that's the shortest part. All this talk about mitosis, it's the shortest part of the cell cycle. Now, as we go through these pieces, I'm going to show you a little animation on how this is happening and try to correlate some of the events. So inside the nucleus, right, what's happening is the chromatin condenses into chromosomes. You can see that happening in that little animation. That's those X shapes came from chromatin. Outside the nucleus, while that's happening, the centrioles move to opposite ends. Those are star-shaped organelles that contain spindle fibers. And while that's also happening, the nuclear membrane breaks down. So now your chromosomes are just hanging out in the cell. Next, metaphase. The chromosomes attach to the spindle fibers which come from the centriole. And important to remember here, middle, those chromosomes, when they attach to those spindle fibers, wind up lining up in the center of the cell. And that's, again, when we think about what does this mean, we're trying to set the cell up to be divided into two. So with all the chromosomes in the middle, we're closer to that step. All right, next, anaphase. Anaphase, those chromosomes which are attached to spindle fibers, those spindle fibers retract and pull the chromosomes apart. And the chromosomes move to opposite ends. And then the last phase, which is called telophase, the nuclear membrane reforms around the chromosomes, the cytoplasm and cell membrane start to pinch, and in that final stage called cytokinesis, we wind up with two new cells that are identical. So looking at the whole process, we took a cell that had unwound DNA, the DNA condensed, lined up in the middle, got pulled apart, and two new cells were produced. So once again, that's the real concept here, is at the end, we wind up with two cells that are identical. To just give you a for instance, so you can follow what's happening, if I had a cell with a parent cell with 12 chromosomes in it, after the process of mitosis, I have two new cells with 12 chromosomes. This we call the parent cell, and these we call the daughter cell. Human beings have 46 chromosomes in our cells. After mitosis, we wind up with 46 chromosomes in each cell. All right, so that's an important example to always have in mind, that at the end of mitosis, whatever the number of chromosomes is, it's retained. You wind up with two cells with the same number of chromosomes. Now, what's mitosis used for? If I'm a unicellular organism, if I'm made of one cell, it's basically my reproductive mechanism. That's how I reproduce. I just split into two. Very popular among the protists. Not that they really chose it, but it if you're a one-cell organism, you evolve to split in half to make two. Now, for a multicellular organism, a little different. We're using mitosis for growth and repair of our body parts, of our cells, tissues, organs. When you break a bone, that bone heals by mitosis. So when you bite your nails, that nail grows back because of mitosis. In the case of a root or a stem in a tree or a plant, those parts get longer because of mitosis. So very different use, but same concept. In both examples, we're making new cells that are exactly the same as the original. All right, so that's it for now. Thanks for watching.